Today we have an opportunity to speak with Second Lieutenant Harry Vandelinder. Harry was a B-17 pilot during the course of World War II, and that's the broad brush look at it, but we want to ask Harry a lot of questions about his experiences in World War II and prior to him becoming an aviation cadet. So Harry, welcome. It's good to have you with us.
Okay.
And I'd like to start out, I think we can paint the picture. Where were you when Pearl Harbor was bombed?
I was, it was a Sunday. I was on Poli Street, right in front of a friend's house, and Sunday morning heard it over the radio.
And what were you doing at the time?
Driving a car.
Were you employed?
No, still going to school.
Which school were you going to?
Ventura Junior College.
Okay.
Yeah.
So take us from Ventura Junior College to entering the service. What was that transition like and how did it take place?
Well, I think I'd never hardly been away from home. And saying most, it was the first time that you ever really left home for any length of time. And then going through boot camp, and they kept you busy 12 hours a day. The cadets, you ran everywhere, you didn't walk. And all I remember, basic training was a nightmare. So.
Where was that?
Santa Ana.
Santa Ana, California?
Yeah, Santa Ana.
So when you got done with basic training, where were you next assigned?
Well, from there I went to Cal Aero in primary. And there it goes 3 months. They washed out about 50–60% there. And then went to Marana, Arizona, and that was secondary, and then advanced. And then they only washed out about, I think about 10% there. And then advanced, they only washed out about 5%.
So what type of aircraft were you flying in advanced?
AT-6s.
Okay.
And yeah, I thought it was going to be a fighter pilot, but they made a bomber pilot on it. Well, they do with you what they want to do. If they need bomber pilots, you're a bomber pilot. So.
And you found out before you graduated from advanced training that you were going to be a B-17 pilot?
No.
Take us through that evolution.
Well, you see, it was January 1941, I think. Yeah, no, 42. And they tell you, they send you to B-17 school. No, I went first to B-24s, and they lost 3 of them in Albuquerque. So they left a whole squadron of 24 people that didn't have a plane to fly, so they switched us to B-17s. And that's how I got into B-17.
And was the B-17 training at the same location or elsewhere?
No, it was at Alamogordo.
Alamogordo, New Mexico?
Yeah, I think.
So how long were you practicing to become you were a co-pilot first?
Yeah. Well, I was so young.
How old were you?
Well, what happened when you finish your B-17 and then you go into combat training, you meet all your crew at the plane. They give you a plane number and they send them, the navigators, bombardiers, and the gunners all sit under the plane, and the last 2 to come are the pilots. And I looked at about 15. I mean, first thing you all did is try to get transferred out. Yeah.
Now, you were a co-pilot, was the pilot, did he look like he was 17?
No, he looked like he was 18.
Oh, that's great. So you started flying as an integral crew at that point?
Yeah.
Always the same people?
Yeah, as a crew, and you went to school half a day and flew a half a day. So it was like in 2.5 months you're trained, but it's intensive training is what.
So after the 2.5 months, you and the crew and others in the squadron started heading for England?
Yeah, we took had to wait for the convoy to go. We went over by convoy, and they all, there's about, must have been 300 ships. I mean, it was, and in the centers where they put the troops in the convoy, and but making up the convoy takes about 2 months. So we graduated, they put us on a train, and we went all over the United States. You'd go in this direction, and next day you'd be going the next direction for about 2 weeks, because that's when they were gonna, we were scheduled to be on the convoy, was in 2 weeks, no place to put us. So we traveled around in it was a steam locomotive. You had coal, the coal had the black, everyone turned black.
Oh.
I mean, you could look at your shirt and pull your arm up like this, and you see this line, black hand.
Well, I would suspect that since it was troop carrier that you didn't have a bar car?
No. I mean, they had 21 people in one cabin, in one room. Bunks from, I think it was 7 high and 2 feet apart, and that was it. Okay. And the heat generated just by the number of people there it was, I mean, it was warm. And
what time of the year was this?
let me see, it was in July. Was July.
Yeah, wonderful.
Good. Yeah.
So you made your way to the East Coast. Where was the convoy?
Well, we went across the Atlantic.
But where did you depart from?
New York now.
New York?
Yeah.
Okay.
And went across, and it took us 10 days because they zigzag, and we landed in Liverpool, and from there went to a staging area where they first the troops, most of the troops go for until they're assigned to a squadron or something.
Okay. So this is in the August of 42?
Yeah, England, yeah.
So you're in England in August of 42?
It was 44. 44. Yeah.
Okay.
44, yeah.
Okay. Then, were you privy to knowing that there was a large invasion going to take place in? So it would.
No.
It would. This is probably, you were there prior to D-Day, were you not?
I was on the way.
During D-Day?
Yeah, we didn't even know what happened, so it was.
That's when you were on the convoy?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but we supported. There was 6 weeks breaking out of northern France, and up to that time, then when we got into a squadron, we supported the Big Red One.
And the Big Red One was doing the big push inland in France.
And they were, I guess, most of them were on D-Day, and then they made it there all the way to Berlin.
You shared with me that when the Germans were attempting to go after the Big Red One and trap them, what was the posture, the offensive posture that your wing had?
The Germans would set up a trap, and they'd find out about it, and then the 8th Air Force would send 1,000 ships over, and a couple of 100 tons of bombs, and that would be it. All the bridges and all forms of transportation would be destroyed. And they, it was, but they didn't call on us too much because the Germans could. They had a lesson that they probably learned the first couple of times.
And didn't repeat it.
No.
So ships were aircraft, not, so we don't confuse anybody watching this tape. The ships dropping bombs were
oh yeah, B-17,
B-17s.
yeah. I was at 305th Bomb Group with General LeMay was the head. They were the second 305th to be in England.
Okay.
Yeah. In the first 3 months in combat, they lost 50% of the original group. I mean, that was, in fact, they didn't let people at home know that what the losses were. In 1943, the 305th, they lost 10% per mission on the average. And the end of 8 missions, you had 50% would be lost at that, your probability. And the probability of survival was only about 1 or 2%. So it was like being condemned to death when, statistically.
Well, you were fortunate. I want to step us through the shoot down, the first shoot down and repatriation to fly again. And I just want to interject and not take your time. The hat that you're wearing was the one that has been with you from the start?
Yeah, and we don't wear uniforms when we fly. Actually, you have 4 pairs of pants on. You have your underwear, your regular pants, your heated suit, and then the coveralls. And and then on top of that, they pack about, on the bomb run, they put 35 pounds of lead flak suit on top of your chest. But after a while, you're flying 10 hours, you can't get up out of the seat. There's no place to go. Where are you gonna, I mean, you're sitting there.
Right.
And with all those clothes on and you're strapped in, you almost feel like you become part of the ship. And I mean, just your head is sticking out. And I mean, it's you can't relieve yourself. I mean, you actually, I would weigh myself prior to going on a mission, and sometimes you'd lose 10 pounds. When I come back, I'd be 10 pounds lighter. And your boots would be full of water. I mean, just soaked.
Right. What altitude were you normally with bombing runs?
About 28 to 30,000 feet. And on oxygen all the time. And in fact, now they say it's the most grueling type of mission, but we didn't know it. We just did it, and it was kind of funny. Now they say, oh, it's that 10 hours sitting there strapped in the seat, and it was a seat that one seat fit all. I mean, for 6 foot, oh, you were 4 foot.
Right.
I mean, it was, they protected the pilot. They had a 1/2-inch battleship steel you were sitting on. And then in the back, they also had that, because really the pilot's kind of the heart of the ship. And if you get rid of him, you get rid of everyone else.
Right.
So. But one thing, everyone takes the same chance. I mean, rank or anything, it's just a form of, it's just probability that the Germans would shoot so many shells. They had figured out it was 471 shells they would hit a B-17, either one little hole or something like that. But
So through the course of all your missions, did you sustain battle damage?
oh yeah, you
on all
come
of them?
back with 20, 30, 40 holes in the ship. And I've had the windshield shot out twice, and the instrument panel, and underneath my seat, it cut the cables to number 1 and 2 engine. But it was preset that when the cables were cut, they had a spring and it would preset the carburetor at 2/3 power. And the engineer that figured this out, I found it was a woman. Yeah, at Boeing. And they were sitting around a table. I guess someone came up with the idea, let's put a spring on if the cables break. And that saved my life if it hadn't been for that.
Let's talk about shoot down number 1. What was the mission, and where did you end up crash landing?
Number 1, I think that made it back to France over our lines. And your lines are only along the main thoroughfares. You've got all the country between the main highways. Is no man's land. And you have Germans, Frenchmen, any roaming in those areas. But in one case, we crash landed. I couldn't jump out because that's an unnatural act, jumping.
But you were equipped to.
Yeah, but so we landed wheels up, and it's like a carrier landing. The ball turret hits first, and then rolls and goes up through the tail, ruins it, and you leave a big hole in the mud where you just skid across, and you land. It must have not been more than about a block and a half, because you hit
Right.
and then skid, and your ball turret acts as a.
So the ball turret gunner was taken out. He could get into the body of the aircraft.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you left him down there, he would have had a pretty good ride, I guess. But no, it was. But then first thing we tried to do was burn the ship, and so being smart, we took the gas cap off and stood about 20 feet away with the flare guns, and we're trying to hit that little hole. So we finally ran out of rockets. And if we'd have hit that hole, we wouldn't be here today. But then everyone has a packet of money.
Right.
It's like $10,000. And it's in different currencies, in francs, and so we figured, let's head for Paris. Yeah.
And have a good time on the town?
No, we didn't know where we were. There's no sign, no nothing.
Right. So if you reenacted that today, do you have an idea where you were?
No.
Still don't?
No, I mean, there's no way. It's just like no signs, no nothing. And finally, one case, after a couple of days, the English patrol picked us up and took us to their medical station.
Was anybody injured on the crash landing?
No.
So the entire crew got out?
Oh yeah, it's not that bad. It's like a carrier landing. But
so that was shoot down number 1. And I know that you had another
well, number
episode.
2 was about the same thing. But no, one of them was almost right in the middle of the Battle of the Bulge.
So that's December 1944.
Yeah. I remember because they had the wounded, and it was in December, and it was snowing, cold, and they didn't have time to transport any of the bodies, so they just, at the airfield where they took the wounded out, they had all the dead soldiers were just stacked in a big stack. And that was the first time that I'd seen a dead person. And it kind of hits reality, you know. And you probably know what, like you probably see more dead people.
You count this as 2.5 shoot downs. Tell us about the half of a shot down that took place.
Oh, we see there was one. It was a shot down. I consider a shot down is when you couldn't bring the plane back.
Right.
And the half was, we landed at a German air base that had just been bombed, and it was taken over by the Americans, and they were trying to fill the bomb holes.
The craters?
And we landed, and there's chunks of cement down the field, and you're one wheel up this way, and a hole here, you lifted. And finally, after we turned out, we were low on gas on that one. With more, we didn't have enough gas to get back, so we found this field, and they gave us a red light, which means don't land. But we had no choice. It was either there or next in the fields. So, yeah, they had gangs of soldiers out there filling the holes out. And I remember the chunks of cement, though, was you didn't want to hit them. You just pulled. Now it scares me. Then it was kind of it was normal, you know,
right.
Just a normal day's work.
Right. Now you had 35 combat missions.
Yeah.
You beat the odds. There's no doubt about it because you spoke of that earlier. And out of those 35, is there any one mission that stands out in your mind that is probably the most dangerous?
Well, I think probably November 2nd, 1944 was one of the biggest air battles in history. I've got a newspaper article that there was we lost 56 bombers, and the Germans lost 410 German fighters. We had 800 P-51s, and that were well, what happened was they have a radio station on the ground, and above this, these German fighters are circling every 500 feet, all the way up to about 25,000 feet, just like a swarm of bees. And they wait, and the American planes are coming in, the P-51s from every direction, see? So the radar's picking the American planes up and going to vector a squadron of the German planes but they have to hold them there until they get them all, get all the people straightened out which direction they're going to go, and then at a signal, they all take off in different directions.
Was that effective?
Oh, they had 410, and we shot down 210 of them.
So you rushed your
Just that
case, it
one
wasn't
day,
that effective?
That one day.
That one day.
Yeah, and 800 P-51s, and guess how many P-51s we lost? 30.
Wow.
Mostly due to mechanical, because,
Was that the P-51 with the Allison engine in it?
yeah. No, it'd be the P-51s with the new
Merlin?
Merlin, yeah.
The Merlin.
But I talked to a P-38 pilot that was flying, shooting up the German 88s. They were strafing them. And he thought the whole 8th Air Force had fallen out of the sky. And an air battle, it only lasts about 10 minutes, you think. And all you see is planes going down. So he's flying down there, and you figure 210 Germans, 56 bombers, all going down in a matter of 10, 20 minutes. And so he's thinking the whole world is coming down. But yeah, I've got the articles, but the articles said that there was no opposition, and it was, you know, I mean, they really don't get all the facts that.
Right. And they had to be there to really appreciate the chaos that was going on.
Oh yeah, well, we had no newspapers, and the only news we would get was from Lord Haha.
And Lord Haha?
Yeah.
That is?
He was English speaking with an English accent, a German that would be on the radio, and he would say, "We've got Lieutenant so-and-so," and he says hello, he's okay, and all this. And some guy from your squadron, you know, could be from the same room you're in.
Oh.
And he says, "Oh, he's okay," and he says, and he wants his wife to to know he's okay.
The European version of Tokyo Rose?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this guy, he was telling the truth. We thought he was lying when he said, "Your probability is only 2%. And he says that, he says, in 8 missions, you would have lost the original, it would be 0.9 to the 8th power is times itself would give you the odds, which is just about 50%. So he was saying these statistics, and we were saying, it's a lie. If we'd have known, we should have listened to it.
That brings up an interesting perspective from your point. Post the mission, when you get out of your wet boots and all the clothing and the flying gear, and you sit down and debrief, do you typically go through, you tell the intel what happened, but does the crew get together and you guys...
No, you all get together there, and they debrief you, and they give you a double shot of whiskey.
Is that enough?
Well, because you've been at altitude for 8 to 10 hours, and you don't have too much oxygen in your body anyway, 2 shots is enough to kind of, like taking about 4 shots, or 5, yeah.
Well, what I was getting at is, did you discuss the odds?
No, you didn't have it. No, like when someone in division come up with this, figured the odds, and he shouldn't have, and he figured out 25 missions, it was about 2% chance. I mean, you're 98% of the guys, and that's like being condemned to death. And these were mostly 19-year-olds, and the morale went straight down. I mean, when someone tells you you're not going to live more than 3 months, a 2% chance, I mean, it is a big shock, see. But the thing with it, what amazes me is that for no reason, morale just came back up, and it was just same as normal.
When did that curve start going back up with morale? What period was it?
Just about a month or so. But during that time, you would go on leave, they would, go on leave, and you'd have 2 days. You'd take 5 days. And you come back and someone's gonna court-martial you? I mean, you get away with anything.
That's because they're very short-handed at that particular
That's
point?
right. I mean, they're not going to court-martial and prevent you from flying. And that would be the best thing they could do. I'd rather be pounding rock at some facility
Well,
than flying it, because at least you would be alive, you see. But no, they even had women on the base. Yeah.
possibly we don't want to go there, but we can just leave that up to the audience imagination.
Oh, there's not much imagination. I mean, well, most of the guys were virgins then. Mm-hmm. And this is kind of funny that you actually, in those days, knew nothing about sex. I didn't know anything about sex. There's no books, no nothing. You leave home, you've never discussed it. And like my brother, he told me about it. It was like, you know what dogs do? Is that people do the same thing. I mean, that was my orientation on sex. So, I mean, that was about it. And and then they had those movies too. You probably saw those, you know.
The ones about the diseases?
Oh God! I mean, they show you these horrible blisters and all this stuff, you know. And usually they said, and the woman will be just like your sister, you know. Yeah. And
it's always a pleasure talking with you, Harry. You bring out things that I wouldn't have thought about.
Yeah. But no, I mean, I remember those movies just scared the heck out of me. I mean, I wouldn't even get 10 feet. Some woman would chase me.
Let's transition. You've been decorated through the course of your tenure with the Army Air Corps. Can you tell us about the decorations?
Oh, well, they give you like air medals every five missions. You got an air medal, and it was usually you picked it up in your box with mail, and really no big deal.
No ceremony.
No. Well, they didn't have time. It was, I mean, all you did, that you flew every time the weather would be good enough to fly.
It takes us back to the Battle of the Bulge, and you flew that mission, and that's December of 1944. Yeah. And how many aircraft?
Well, actually, the Battle of the Bulge, it was just one day that the 8th Air Force, they hit all transportation. In fact, they had some B-17s go in at 5,000 feet and drop bombs on the railroad. Just probably every quarter of a mile, drop a 100-pound bomb. And you figure they'd probably have, 6 tons, 100 pounds, that's 20. I mean, they would have a lot of, you'd have no, they couldn't repair the railroad. It would be completely useless.
So cut off their rear support.
Yeah.
So no transportation up to the troops.
And then bridges. The Germans, they needed their tanks and stuff. When they're retreating, and they'd knock out all the bridges and everything else. So they, at the end, I guess they were traveling by running, walking. In fact, well, we didn't get much information, so we didn't have any newspapers, no nothing. So all we knew is what we were doing. So.
Well, it took till May to defeat the Germans, and where were you at the end of the war in Europe?
Oh, well, Berlin. When Berlin fell, I've got a bunch of some medals that I never picked up. I do qualify for the Victory Medal of Berlin, and that was I was there when I went into Berlin, but the thing of it is that when I finished my missions, I went AWOL for about 2 weeks.
Is this to catch up on that other?
No, well, what happens is come back and everyone takes their double shot of whiskey and puts in a canteen deal, and you drink that, see. Well,
Right.
after being 10 hours of being in the, without oxygen, you're really subject to not getting drunk, but whatever they call it. And so they packed some stuff up, got me dressed, and carried me down to the train station on their shoulders. And the train station, the doors are outside, so they opened up and put me on a seat. I remember some little old lady slapping me in the face to make sure I was alive, So I didn't wake up until I went into London. And
This was the celebration of your last mission.
yeah, last mission, when they finished your last mission. But it was kind of funny. It was where they lift on your shoulder and carry you down and stuff you in a train, and off to London you go, and you didn't know you were even doing it.
Well, did you have a good time?
I had a very good time. Yeah, for 2. But what hurt, though, was it came back. Well, the commission had, usually you finish your mission up, they give you a first lieutenant, just automatic. So when I came back, went into the orderly room, and I'm back. And they didn't even know I was gone. I mean, there were, but it was, but then it was, they take you to debarkation camp, wait for another ship to go back on a convoy. So I got there, and all of a sudden they had microphones on the base, and they said, "Would Lieutenant Vandelinder please report to the adjutant's office," or what was it, the colonel's office? Man, I thought, uh-oh, they did catch me now. And so I went in, and it was one of the WWIIs that we'd come over with on the same convoy, and it was a friend of one of the gunners, and he'd let her know that I was going to be there, and she was the secretary to the head guy, and she's the one that put it on.
So you weren't in trouble.
I thought I was for a while.
You had the opportunity to get back on the first honor flight from Reno to Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
to see the World War II Memorial. How did that trip go?
It was very impressive. I mean, I didn't know they had so many memorials back there in Washington. And I think we must have seen about 10 of them. And like you get on a bus to Memorial, and about a half hour later you get another one. But yeah, it was.
Tell me about the Arlington Cemetery experience.
Let me see. Let me see. What was?
The changing of the guard?
Yeah, I have a video camera. I changing of the guard. But those guys they have it down pat. I mean, no expression, no nothing. And it lasts, I think, about maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes.
Yeah, I was impressed that they have one of the honor flight members put the wreath at the tomb of the unknown.
Yeah.
I was watching that on TV.
Yeah.
So yours was a special flight coming home, and I don't want to minimize everything in between, but when you arrived at the airport, the Southwest airline 737 was there, but the nose art said Nevada won.
Yeah, and the governor was there too, and his son. His son's a very, very, very good son. But the governor, I sat and talked to him for a while, but he wouldn't give me a cabinet poster.
So Governor Sandoval surprised all of you.
Yeah, I really admire him, and his kid too. Were very disciplined. I wish mine were like that.
As I understand this entire honor flight procedure, you leave Reno, you get into Baltimore, and you're hoteled there, and you have dinner that night.
Yeah.
And get to meet, and there's people coming in from all around the country, are there not?
Oh yeah, we saw them from Long Beach. We saw them from the hotel was just full of honor flight participants. It was, but yeah, they have. But we were the first ones from Nevada.
Right.
And
Yeah. So the next morning, you load buses, police escort, take you right to the World War II Memorial.
yeah, they have special buses, and they know exactly where they're going, and it's very well thought out.
Over the course of the year since World War II, did you have an opportunity to revisit with any comrades that you flew with?
Oh yeah, but I went to the 50th anniversary back over to England, and went to Charleston, and we had 2 Medal of Honor there were on the same thing as, but they have ceremonies. The English, they put robes on and all sorts of gathers.
Yeah.
And like the mayor, they all carry staffs when they march in, but yeah, they a lot of ceremony, and they had all that stuff when we were there. They gave us a couple of banquets, and but they have more American trucks, Jeeps, and all this stuff, brand new ones. They have, in England, they have World War II Day, where everyone dresses up in American uniforms. And on the street, it's just like it was during World War II. And some guy, when I told him I had a uniform, man, he would have died to get it.
Well, the last 4th of July ceremony on the beach, where we have an opportunity to recognize all of our veterans, I noticed that you had the hat, but your son was able to wear your uniform.
Yeah, I couldn't get into it. I figured I need someone to model it.
And he did an excellent job.
Yeah. So I figured, and I thought people would like to, just to see the old uniform. But I like the old one better than the new one myself.
Well, the Army Air Corps is no more. So that part of history is going to live forever with your son, and they'll be passed down, hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah, I have that jacket, the original. And this is a duplicate of the original because the original, they're worth about $6,000 now. And so I couldn't get into it either, but so I have this one here.
Let me transition. For your 90th birthday,
Yeah.
you had a special gift that took a long time coming. And we finally got it to you 18 months late. But you want to share the Thunderbird?
Oh, yeah. Thunderbird, I was really impressed with that. I all signed it, and a picture, and they said, to second lieutenant. They could have just put lieutenant, second lieutenant.
Well, you know, communications probably wasn't as best as it could have been there, Harry, but fortunately they were able to come through, and they were very pleased. I had an opportunity to talk with the senior pilot, and he wanted to make sure that we sent pictures of you receiving it, but that you had in fact received it. And that was very special for us to put together for you, and it's well deserved.
Oh, I've got it hung right in the special place in the house.
I've noticed during the course of our veterans meetings and elsewhere that you're a sketcher.
Yeah, I mean, looking back, that I was pretty good at it. I mean, not just good, very good. But then I didn't think I was very good. But looking back,
When did you start sketching?
oh, right after I got out of the service, I started. That's when I started.
And after you got out of the service, you went to work for Lockheed
I went to Northrop.
or Northrop?
I worked there for 9 years and then 38 years at Lockheed. I'm a job hopper,
So Northrop for 9 years, in what capacity?
engineer.
Engineering.
Yeah,
And then with Lockheed, an engineer as well?
yeah.
And what programs were you involved with
Well,
Lockheed?
Almost A1, the first submarine missile, the A1. And that was more of a deterrent. That it had only one bomb, but finally the ultimate, I think, had something like 9 that could target just in one.
The MIRVs.
Yeah.
Wow. So when did you retire after Lockheed?
Yeah, I retired out of Lockheed.
And where did you go from there?
I went retired. I was in San Jose, and then I've been up here for 17 years.
Through your course of time with Lockheed?
What?
When you were with Lockheed, you were coming up here?
In fact, I've been retired almost more than I worked at Lockheed, 29 years.
Yeah. Well, you're still a young 91, soon to be 92 next month.
Yeah,
Right.
next month, yeah.
Yeah, and you're feeling well. Your health is good, and the VA is taking care of you.
I'm afraid I'm live to be 100, and that's all the aches and pains. And
Well, you get back to those little shots of brandy again. You know that'll dull those aches and pains.
maybe.
Well, tell us about your family.
Well, I've got 4 boys. That's most thing I'm proud of is, and they're all up here.
And what do they do?
Well, there's 3 of them. One of them is works at. He's a kind of a CEO of a company, you know, well, he's at a point where he can't blame anybody above him.
He's the top.
Yeah, it's, you know, and it's where the everything stops. So I don't know what they'd call him, but then one of them was a property manager, and then 2 of them one of them works for the parks department here in.
The Parks Department in Incline?
Yeah. And then the other one still looking for a job. But I have like 7 people in our house, never see anybody.
Do you have grandchildren?
Yeah,
How many?
3. Yeah.
And with boys, girls, and what's the
All
mix?
boys. In
All
fact,
boys
we have
again?
no girls in the whole, anybody. And I had no girls, brothers had, and yeah.
Now, you're mentioning brothers. How many siblings did you have?
Me and my brothers were,
How many brothers?
oh, I had 1 brother and a sister. I was the middle pickle. Yeah.
The middle pickle, huh? Yeah. That's an expression I haven't heard for a long time. Yeah. Harry, you've had such an illustrious military career, as well as distinguished civilian career. Is there anything that you want that stands out most in your mind of here's Harry Vandelinder and here's what I am most proud of?
Let me see. That's a hard question because, well, I'm proud of my boys. They're all up here. So, I don't know, they're out there waiting for their inheritance, I guess.
Well, it could very well be.
Yeah.
That's probably, they don't talk about that.
Yeah, maybe I better watch them. I don't want any wheelchair going over a cliff or something.
Oh. Well, you mentioned you were at the VA hospital today. Did they take good care of you?
Oh, yeah. I've had no problem with the Veterans Hospital. In fact, they're a little bit over helpful. I mean, I've been checked out for more stuff than they do an awful lot of preventive medicine.
Well, so you make the century mark.
Well, I'll tell you, I've been going there since for 12, 15 years. And the only thing they found wrong with me had wax in my ears. Yeah, and they made an appointment with like 2 weeks ahead. So when I went in, I'd got the wax out way ahead of time. I didn't have to wait for 2 weeks.
Was that part of the hearing?
Yeah, well then I went in, they made an appointment. 2 weeks later, the guy looks in my ear and said, "There's no wax in there." And I said, "Sure, I took it out myself." And I said, "It's going to cost me $50, just for that 15-minute visit, because I pay my own. I don't.
Right.
In fact, it's cheaper. My medical is cheaper on the outside than there at the VA. But I told him it's cost me $50 to get the wax out, no wax out. And he said, it would have cost you more if I did it on the outside. So I guess.
Well, part of what we want to introduce into this video to memorialize everything is have copies of your medals and decorations, so that and photos that you may have from your time in the military, so we can add those to this video.
Yeah, I don't have them with me though.
No, it's not going to be today, but we'll hold your feet to the fire to make sure that that we get those, and we'll make that a part of it. Well, what a delight to sit down and talk to you and have an opportunity to hear firsthand. Some of the stories are repeats that you've told me, but 99% of it is new, and certainly do appreciate it.
What I'd like to say though is the service, I thought it was a big adventure. I mean, where would a 20-year-old be able to fly a B-17 into combat? And all the adventures you had, like, in fact, I was part of the atomic bomb. I was there the day the first atomic bomb went off at Alamogordo at White Sands.
Mm-hmm.
I was flying a P-61. We were picking up the radiation from the fallout and out of Winslow, Arizona. So I got to be part of the first atomic bomb. I could say I worked on it.
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a little bit of history I was not aware of. That's great.
No, I'm just saying there's a lot of adventure that.
Well, was that the Navy? It's not a job. The Navy says it's not a job, it's an adventure.
That's right.
Yeah, that's their motto.
When you figure, foreign countries get to ride a train. Yeah, first time I was on a train.
And you're wondering if everybody got the soot all over them?
Oh, well, it was about 2.5 weeks, the same clothes on, and it was hot. They opened the windows, and you had this soot come in, right. And it's all over everything, see, and then pretty soon it gets on your hands, face, and man, they wouldn't let us in a restaurant those days.
As we wrap this up, is there any one thing that you want to leave with us?
Well, one thing is, I'd like to say that the 19-year-olds are the ones that fight the war. And they're the ones, and it's amazing during World War II how patriotic and how sacrificial these guys were. I mean, when they were short on gunners in early '44, and so General LeMay put out an edict. He says anybody could be a gunner, the cooks, the guys doing the clerks, anyone, orderlies. So they were short of these gunners, and they signed up, and he got his gunners. It's in his book, and they're all 19, 20-year-olds, and they knew what the odds were because they were the ones that cleaned up the blood and guts from the ships, and they knew, but I have an idea why they did it. I mean, it's just an idea. It was the camaraderie that they were, say, a truck driver, he's alone over there and all he's doing driving a truck, and he sees the crew members that have lived together and are like brothers, like fraternity brothers. I mean, they go on leave together, do everything together. And I think they wanted to be part of that. And so they signed up when they knew what the odds were. And this is, I wouldn't sign, if I'd have known what the odds were, I'd have been, put me on the airplane, I'd have been kicking and screaming. I mean.
Well, you touched on something. Here we are, September 8th, 2014. You've seen a lot in your lifetime. And what is your impression of the world today where we stand?
Well, I'm just glad that I only have about 10 more years. I mean, it's a mess. And, but it was a mess when you figure beginning of World War II. I mean, we were in a big trouble then. We only had 300,000 soldiers of the Navy, Marines, everything, 300. And they were, like today, we're ranked #1. No one will challenge the United States. I mean, we've got these planes one plane will shoot down a whole squadron. I mean, no one will challenge us. Then we were rated 19th in the world of world
Before
power,
World War II.
the world powers. Germany, Japan, England, Italy, they were the top ones. We were 19th. And they made no appropriations for anything to increase the army, because they figured if you didn't have an army, you're not going to go to war, you know. And Congress, some of the speeches I've seen made in the past are, I mean, but we were 19th, and guess who was the 18th? Portugal had
Wow.
a bigger army than we did.
Wow. That's a startling statistic.
Yeah, I mean,
I typically share with the junior ROTC and others that will listen that there are 310 million people in the United States, and there's 2,500,000 Guard, Reserve, and active duty in all services. And that represents 0.7% of people that are protecting this nation. And out of that 0.7%, 60% are support. So the other 40% are the guys at the tip of the spear.
yeah.
And we thank you for being at the tip of the spear during the course of your service, Harry. We're so proud of you, and thank you very much for taking the opportunity to sit down and talk with us.
Okay.